Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Lawyer Forward podcast. I'm Mike Whalen. This week, we have a special series going to commemorate the launch of our ebook, Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot, a Pragmatist Guide to Legaltech Marketing in the Age of Zero Click. To commemorate that, and by the way, you can go to lawyersdon'tcare.com and get your free copy of the ebook, which is a hilarious domain name that I'm super glad was available because it made me laugh. Lawyersdon'tcare.com. Get your copy. So to do this week, I'm talking to smart friends about marketing-y things, specifically talking to lawyers who are weirdos, except for when we're not. So today, I have my friend Nika Kabiri. Nika, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't know if I feel very smart today. We'll see.
Boy, I hope so, buddy. Nika is a decision scientist by training, a professional person who makes people feel bad about their choices. That's basically what I need Nika for, is so that I could feel awful about
No
all the
worries.
dumb
As
ways.
bad as you feel, I feel
Yeah.
20 times worse
Dumb
every
ways
single
that I
day.
make calls
Yeah.
about life. Nika, before we get rolling, I do want, you have a really interesting background. We both went to UT for law school, and later we're like, what the heck are we doing? So tell people real quick about your career and what it has to do with sort of marketing and how we're speaking to lawyers about their choices to improve their practices.
Yeah. So, law school for me was terrible because I cared more about why lawyers and the legal system is the way it is than understanding the law. Which is why going to a graduate program in sociology and getting a PhD in sociology and understanding law and society or studying law and society as part of that made a lot more sense to me. The natural transition to market research, consumer insights research, it was just made a lot of sense. So for the past between 15 and 20 years, I've been using my background in sociology. I had a specialty area in choice theory and institutional analysis, which is just a way of saying that our institutions shape our decisions. And I've just applied that, and I'm currently, as a consultant of my own consultancy, I'm applying all of that knowledge to understand how consumers, B2B and B2C, make decisions. And the fun part is why those decisions aren't always great for them, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I seem to recall that you worked in the communications department as a professor, and one of the things that you were doing then that you do now, that your consulting firm does, is a lot of consumer research. And so there's a lot of how specifically people choose to buy things in your career that is really relevant to this series, because we are helping legal tech companies figure out how to help lawyers buy their thing and improve their practices. So super relevant. We've got a handful of topics to get through, and I want to start with, I wrote a book, Lawyer Forward. Let's make this about me. This is the moment, where I talked about how just lawyers have this weird mismatch where they are told both to be expert and accessible. There's a bunch of emotional labor. There's a bunch of busyness. There's overwhelm. I want to understand how really overwhelmed people deep in the emotional labor, deep in this conflict of this really impossible conflict of being both expert and accessible, how they make choices to improve their practices. Talk to us about what overwhelm does to decision making.
Yeah. And I want to preface this by saying that I formally served as a senior director of decision science at Clio. I also served as director of strategic insights at Avo. I've done research in legal tech for most of the time that I've done consumer research. I've talked to a lot of lawyers. So overwhelm is not exclusive to lawyers. Everybody experiences overwhelm. But I think what people fail to kind of unpack properly is that we will make time for things that we enjoy and that we care about. Like if you talk to a lawyer, if you think about it as a lawyer, there are things that you might like to do and things that you don't want to do. And the things that you don't want to do are hassles and nuisances, and they can feel overwhelming. But if you really enjoy studying the case law for a particular client, time just flies. You get in the flow. It's somewhat enjoyable. You don't feel overwhelmed in those moments. The overwhelm comes from things that you just hate doing. And that's true for anybody, right? In any aspect of life. Like we're not too overwhelmed with tasks and to-do lists that we can't scroll TikTok for 3 hours. We'll do it because it's enjoyable, right? It's the hassles that we don't
Sorry, I
like.
want to underline that. If I'm understanding you correctly, there is a difference between you're busy and in a flow state and you're busy and freaking hate everything. And that
Yeah, I
changes
mean,
the way we make decisions.
I guess I'm just even asking, what does overwhelm mean?
Yeah.
Because we're all inundated with so many responsibilities and stressors. It's really stressors, like how to make our lives better. The world might seem a little bit scary right now. How do you navigate your way through it? And it's more than just things on a list that you have to get through. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I got to do today. It really is, like you mentioned, and the emotional labor that you have to do, the cognitive load that it takes to kind of work through things. It's fatigue more than overwhelm, in my opinion. So when you think about like people or lawyers that, if you're marketing to lawyers, assuming they are overwhelmed, you got to really understand what that means for your audience. Like, is it true for your consumer audience that they have way too many things to do in a day and they'll never get through it and it's driving them nuts? Is it true that there are too many hassles? Maybe not a lot of things, but too many of them are hassles. Is it true that like they don't have a lot of things to do, but they're just stressed too much about the two or three things that they're on their plate? There's a difference. How you market to them depends on which of those or maybe some other option out there is going on.
So that's interesting because you're seeing, I think it's pretty obvious to say that when people are stressed, they're not making very deep rational decisions. If we feel like we're running from a wolf or whatever, we only have a couple of settings. It's either lay down and act like we're dead or run like a crazy person. And if we're stimulating those kinds of hormones, those kinds of feelings in our everyday life, seems pretty obvious that we're going to do some dumb stuff. We're going to make mistakes in our practice. We're going to make mistakes in the way we choose to improve our practice. We're going to be mean to the person we didn't mean to be mean to. It's going to mess us up. As a legal tech company that's trying to talk to those people, one of the things that you mentioned in preparation is that if that is the state, your job in communication and in your product is less about persuading them and more about giving them a sense of security and safety, more about pulling them out of that moment of running from a wolf. Talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. Marketing to people under stress requires making them feel less stressed. That should be the priority. A lot of companies make the mistake of persuading them that their product will alleviate their stress. Persuasion is not as effective because a stressful brain will not process information well. It will not take in information well. Whatever you're saying is just going to sound like wah, wah, wah to them. So it's really about making them understand you as the company that will make them feel better. And they will associate that feeling with you. And of course, that will have a halo effect.
That's really interesting because I'm thinking about, obviously this series is about using media. It's about content as a broad word. And so I'm thinking about how media makes people feel. And the reason this matters is there's a lot of advice out there about sort of interrupting, right? Breaking into the stream. Everybody's so distracted. They're just scrolling up, whatever. Just break in there. So get in there and yell and say, Sunday, 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 the trucks are coming or whatever. And
Right.
it sounds like the way you're discussing that sounds like if you do that, you might end up with more impulsive, bad decision making, but you haven't comforted. You haven't made
Right.
somebody feel more aligned or more secure or more. Talk about how that choice that we're making, that legal tech companies are making about media, and how to approach that moment of interruption.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to start by saying I have made impulsive decisions from an Instagram ad or a TikTok ad.
Who listened to you, which is so weird. So sometimes it's not that impulsive. They've been listening to you for the last 4 hours.
They know. I mean, but it's impulsive because I did not think through the decision. And there isn't really a thing that I have bought impulsively that way that I am happy about having bought. So that brand, those brands, if I even remember their names, which I don't, if they want me to buy again, they won't get me to do that because I have already felt tricked. I've felt like I was, yeah, the algorithms were trying to get me to do something. They were nudging me consumers aren't that stupid. They might get nudged, they might get tricked, they might get like moved towards a certain call of action that you want them to do.
Mm.
But if you care about what happens after that, if you care about lifetime value, if you care about customer loyalty, the that shine and sparkle and like get them where they're at and get them to do something and do the little dance and look, over here, buy it, buy it, buy it. It might earn you revenue today. It could lose you a lot of revenue next month. So you really have to understand for yourself, like, what is your objective? Are you kind of what I call, for lack of a better term, a hit it and quit it kind of company? You just want to like get their money and run, or do you want to build a customer base that is going to last a lifetime? And if
But
that's the case,
but as
yeah,
a marketing exercise, then it feels like there's sort of three places, right? I remember talking to a legal tech company that I worked with, and I was talking to the founder, and I said to him, that these lawyers that you're trying to talk to, specifically, he was talking to solo lawyers, which is a group that I knew very well, and I remember saying to him, you think that they're making decisions by spreadsheets. They're not making decisions by spreadsheets. People don't do that. And he, I kid you not, said, well, I make decisions by spreadsheets. And what was interesting about that conversation is after pulling on that thread, he justified decisions by spreadsheets in a way, right? Like the very idea that he was going to sit and make a spreadsheet, that was itself a choice. And it felt like he was making the choice and then going backwards and rationalizing it. And so as a marketing exercise, it seems to me that there are sort of these three moments. One is before the choice, and it's making people feel comfortable. It's making them feel safe. It's showing up where they are and creating some sense of authority and trust, like you're saying. Then there's the actual moment of the choice. Somebody needs to be pulled out of the world to go, okay, fine, I'm going to push this button. And then there's this after moment where you've got to help them rationalize the choice that they made, because
really true.
we all kind of make impulsive
That's really
decisions, right?
true.
So
That's really true.
talk about
Yeah,
that. If I'm going to do content, right, just to use a word, it feels like doing content is way more than the founder doing a dancing video on TikTok to get somebody's attention so they'll push a button. It
yeah,
sounds like there's like a whole spectrum of activity you got to do.
yeah, yeah. I think it starts by reframing the role of marketing as um, more than just top of funnel activity. Marketing should continue to happen post sale. If you are a legal tech SaaS company that relies on recurring revenue and subscription based, pricing, you have to continue marketing past the sale, because there's always a point where the customer is going to choose to bounce or could choose to bounce. Like some customers don't, right? They stick around because that's just who they are. But if there's hesitation at the point of sale, then you better believe they're using your product the very first 2 months, and using that first 2 or 3 month trial period, even though you don't call it a trial period, you call it, oh, we got a customer, right? They're using that time to decide for sure. Like that's their second decision. They decided to buy. Now they're deciding whether to stay. And, you know, you've got to continue marketing at that stage. Now, marketing is going to look different post sale, obviously, but you've got to continue proving to them that you are worth sticking around for. There is a point with most SaaS solutions at which changing or switching becomes too costly on its own to have to do. So maybe marketing can let off at that point, and that I think might be 3 months, might be 6 months. After a year, usually I think you're good. But yeah, don't think about marketing as just something you do top of funnel.
Well, and to be clear, I think in the diffusion of innovation research, which I talk about in the ebook, there are two key kinds of people. One is the missionary, which Rogers calls the early adopters, and then the congregation, which is the early and late majority. For different reasons, they're both questioning as soon as they make a purchase. The missionary, because they're expending social capital to tell their friends. So they're evaluating from from moment one, because if they go spend that social capital and they're wrong, then they lose the place of privilege that they need. They lose the status that makes them want to be missionaries. And then for the majorities, they're conservative. They're pragmatists. They don't care. They just, as long as it works, they're going to do it. So they're evaluating right away. But I'm hearing a conflict that I don't know how to reconcile, and maybe the answer is just it depends really. But the people jump, right? We make impulsive decisions. There's, I don't know if a desire for novelty is the way to phrase it, but people
Right.
jump, right? We
Right.
make impulsive decisions. It's just our way. But also you see this like in the diffusion of innovation research, there was this seed corn, this hybrid seed corn they were trying to get farmers to go use, and it was
Right.
objectively better. But for the majorities, which again I want to highlight, you don't have a market unless you have the majorities, right? If all you have is early adopters, you literally, this is crossing the chasm. You don't have a business until you get to the majorities. For the majorities, they don't want freaking novelty. They want to stick. It's habit. It's
Yeah.
talk about this difference between we have this impulsive desire for novelty, but we also just don't like change. How does that affect our decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, novelty can be excitement. Novelty can be hope for something better, but a lot of times novelty is risk because you don't really know if what you're going to get. It's just like dating. You don't know whether a divorce is going to make sense because you're not sure if this other person that looks much more appealing is actually better than what you've got, right? It's a chance that you're taking. It's a bet that you have to make. So it's not the case that people always run to novelty. They might find it worth paying attention to. I think in some industries where, say, your status depends on how well your like in IT, how great your tools are for the company, right? How great your decisions are. You do want to choose novelty because it's better, but not just because it's novel. I think novelty is really great when you're like, you know, you want some excitement or entertainment or fun. Like I've never tried this soda before. Why would I this is a fruity soda. I'll try this.
Right.
Or let me go to this vacation spot. Never tried this before. This is a hot new place. Like if you want fun experiences that are low risk, great. But to market yourself as new or fresh and novel as a legal tech company to a already risk averse audience
Mm.
who is already overwhelmed and unable to really process information well and really assess that risk properly, it just might backfire.
Right. I like that risk framing because, like, you think about, we do make the classic impulsive decision is the candy bar at the front of the store, that it's
Yeah.
positioned there because people, but in that
Yeah.
situation, the risk is fairly low. Eating that candy bar is not going to make you fat. Not eating that candy bar is not going to make you skinny. And so the risk of that individual candy bar, obviously, cumulatively making that decision over and over again is going to make you need to take Ozempic. But, that one decision, that's not true. To your point earlier, it feels like if you are enabling impulsive decisions for buying a complex product like a legal tech tool for practice management, which is huge adoption costs, like there's a lot of change in a practice to make that thing work. If you're like, hey man, we can just go get these impulsive buys, you're setting yourself up for later. People are going to say, wait, no, the
Yeah.
risk, that there was risk. But people do talk themselves into the choices that they made before. And this is certainly true of founders who value the thing they made. So, like, is there, even if you know you're going to lose 80%, if you know you can get an impulsive buy, can I talk myself into, no, go get the impulsive buys, worry about retention later?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole spreadsheet. It's sort of similar to the spreadsheet thing you were saying earlier, right? That the spreadsheet is really a CYA move. It's a cover your ass move. It's to say, I'm not impulsive. I'm not biased. Look at all the data that I have.
Mm.
You can have the most the best data, the most thorough data, and be absolutely biased in interpreting what that data means. And you can use your impulse or your gut or your emotion to say, well, maybe I'll dismiss what this part of the data means and I'll just take what, you cherry pick. I've seen this. I've seen CEOs do this. I've seen so many CEOs do this. Um, it's it can be a rationalization. It can be a security blanket. We obviously do always backwards rationalize. We don't almost ever know why we choose what we choose. So being coming from a legal tech company's perspective and trying to market to lawyers, it's not so much about trying to convince them to make the decision that you want them to make through persuasion. It's sometimes about making them feel good about the rationalization for their
Mm.
impulsive decision.
Well,
But
and
again, yeah.
to your point, I think what rationalization works for that depends on the person, right? So again, if we're talking about the missionary, afterwards they
Mhm.
want to feel like they're in the know, like they're the cool kid. That is the thing that motivated them to make the choice initially. And so if you're going to reaffirm the choice for them, you're going to put in a bunch of features and benefits, and we got a cool community and we're
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah.
For the people who are the majorities and they're lagging behind, you see this in the What Makes Lawyers Happy study. They might have jumped because they thought it might make them more money or get them, more billable hours or whatever. But afterwards, that doesn't fulfill them. And so the backwards rationalization is, oh no, you're so competent. Now that you have this, you're the smart kid, right? Only the
Yeah.
smart kids use this. And so I think if you're crafting your marketing, particularly targeted to these two key groups, you have to realize that different people are going to jump for different reasons. And more importantly, people are going to backwards rationalize for totally different reasons.
Well, this is why you can't stop marketing once the sale is made, because you need to make people feel zero regret when they backwards rationalize their decision. But you also have to, like, you cannot cut corners on your product. I mean, that is something that and again, I've seen a lot of businesses do this as well. They have a decent product. It's not a terrible product. It's mediocre. They People buy that product because they think it's exceptional. They start using that product and then realize it's mediocre. And they want to try to figure out how could they have made such a bad decision, and then they backwards rationalize, right?
Mm.
Well, this is, cutting edge, or this is what everybody else uses, or what have you. As a marketing team at a legal tech company, you have to go in there and make sure that decision does not feel like a mistake. And the best way to prevent consumers, from feeling like they've made a mistake is to just build a good product, is to listen to what consumers are saying about the bugs, about the glitches, about the weaknesses. And I think a lot of legal tech companies are so running before they are ready. They want to grow really rapidly. They have investors who are pushing them to grow. They start wanting to, like, branch out into these other offerings. You see CPG companies do this all the time. A wall of juice, and then they want to make a bar, and then you have to it's like, well, is the juice good enough? Like, make
Yeah.
sure the product is good enough first.
Well, and what a lot of companies will do, speaking of content marketing, is they'll essentially look to marketing to create value that the product itself doesn't
Can't
create. So
do.
you see a lot of
Yeah.
these companies, they'll like start a community and everybody wants to be in this community. And we happen to have a technology product and it's just not that great. You'd have actually made more money if you just went and made the freaking community and not tied. So I think there's a lot of marketing needs to serve the product, right? Like there
Yeah.
needs to be alignment between what marketing is doing in terms of communicating value, receiving communication back. I think that this is an untapped thing that a lot of companies don't do well, is using marketing as a conversation to get feedback for the product back. But the idea that you're going to go solve a product problem via your communication, there's probably there's a Scott Galloway thing that back in the days of branding, you could put a really mediocre product out and then wrap it in brand and people would go buy it anyway because it was
Yeah.
on the billboards and all this.
Yeah.
You still saw fails. I mean, Pepsi Clear
Yeah.
still failed. Like if it were that simple, then you wouldn't see these same failures. Maybe the product only has to be good enough, but it has to be
Mhm.
good enough.
It has to be good enough. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it doesn't have to be exceptional, but it has to be enough for people to not regret that decision. And it's such an obvious, I mean, it's like an adage, right? Like, it's a maxim. The number one rule of marketing is to have a good product, just have something good to sell. But it's so interesting how our biases kick in, how founders' biases kick in once they start, developing these products and thinking they're good enough when they haven't done their research. They don't know what consumers really think. They may not be good enough. And then they expect marketing to slap lipstick on it and make it look great.
Yeah.
Um,
The fairy dust.
yeah.
Well, and this is like if your marketing is expected to drag along your product, chances are it's just never going to work, right?
Not going to
Because
work.
you've already made, if you don't fix the product, then you've essentially built a media company that's
Totally.
succeeding as itself and not a
Totally.
product company. And so you're covering up. And speaking of, I want to talk about founders, because we're dealing with these founders and these builders. That's who this piece is talking to. And they have biases, right? They have decisions that they're making, like
Human.
that one, like,
Yeah.
oh, the product is fine. Like, look at this excellent feedback we got from our marketing. Okay, bro, but you went and you gathered the very few people who are the early adopters who love your message. It's hiding facts from you right now. You need to be more self-reflective. But in general, I think a lot of these founders are saying, what the heck is wrong with these lawyers? I built the hybrid seed corn that makes more corn per acre. Why are they not buying this?
I've heard that specifically from CEOs that I've worked with.
Yeah.
And even to the point where I've heard one CEO tell me when I presented research that kind of suggested their idea was not going to fly among the consumers they were targeting. The remark was something like, well, they don't, customers don't really, people don't really know what they want. They need us to sort of sell it to them and tell them what they want. Suggesting that, like, oh, well, marketing can solve the problem of a lack of pain points and a lack of needs. Like, you can message your way into convincing people to buy anything. Now, that's not untrue necessarily. But again, the question is, what kind of company do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of company that builds a solution that you love because you are too biased to objectively see the flaws in it, and then have, maybe only early adopters who then realize after they bought it, they don't really need it or they don't even use it? Or do you want to make money? I mean, really, at the end of the day, do you want to feel like you're right and smart, or do you want to make money? And if you want to make money, you've got to admit, I'm sorry to say, you are not always right, and your baby's sometimes ugly. And more often than not, all you have to do is tweak a little to get it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're asking marketing to support people doing a lot of backwards rationalizing, you're putting a huge cognitive burden on
Oh
people
yeah,
who are cognitively burdened. And they're just
right.
not going to want to, even if the marketing
No,
is brilliant, even if the
no.
writing and the support and all that is brilliant, these people are just not going to choose that level of work.
But just think about it. Like, it's not the case that their only option is, I'm going to backwards rationalize, or I'm not. Another option is, I'm going to blame that company. And I've heard this many times before. Sales team was manipulative. Sales team wasn't honest. I didn't hear all the right
I
facts.
didn't make a
They
bad
didn't
call.
tell me.
Yeah.
The company made
Right.
me do it. And you do not want to be the company that people point fingers at and say, well, they're just slimy.
Yeah. This is an interest, because product development in 2025 is so much easier. The reason you see this influx of companies, including legal tech companies who are AI this and AI that, including from people who have nothing to do with legal, they're just looking at it as a market and they're building some AI tool. Product development is not the difficult thing. But the good news about that is you can abandon it quickly. If you
Yep,
do your quality marketing of trying to
yep,
reach people,
yep,
of trying to persuade, but also to comfort and to strengthen and to backwards,
yep,
look back at their
yep.
choice and feel good about that choice. If you're not seeing those results out of your marketing, you can make product pivots really fast. Don't get
Yep.
married to the one thing that you built.
The hardest thing, and yes, you're right. The hardest thing to do as a business owner, as a founder, as a CEO, is to admit that you have biases, to uncover those biases, and to not let them get in the way. I have yet to work with a CEO who is excellent at that. I have met some amazing CEOs who are great at that.
Yeah.
And it really does make a difference. You can see the difference in the culture of the company. You can see the difference in the performance of the business. And it just doesn't mean that your business is going to succeed, because there's so many variables that are involved in that. But you set yourself up with the best chances of success if you do that hard work and realize what your biases are and then check them. And that is why That is why companies like Amazon and Google and Meta spend a good amount of money on people like me to do research for them, because the toughest thing is to check your biases against what consumers are actually saying. Consumer research is not, a frill. It is not a luxury. It is so crucial
Yeah.
to giving you the information you need to make sure you're not getting in your own way. But the fact that most legal companies don't really do it or do it well or care to really understand how to do it well is, I mean, let's just say it's a good thing that most legal companies don't, because the ones that do are ahead. They're going to get ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are a few. That's a good pivot to the services of Kabiri Consulting. I know you do a
Mm.
lot of work both for consumer research and for helping just these CEOs and these founders make better decisions. For people who want to learn more about what you do, what's the best way to reach out?
It's kabiriconsulting.com. It's KAB as in boy, IRI consulting, all one word.com.
Well,
We
yeah,
have a resources page on our website if you want to download our latest guide on how decision science should inform consumer insights. It's Smarter Insights, Smarter Marketing. Please do that.
cool. We'll make sure links to that are in the show notes. And for any of you listening who want to know how to create those kinds of moments that both prompt the right people to care about your product and also to feel good about it afterwards, and the processes for communication that we use for that, go to lawyersdon'tcare.com and download your free copy of Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot. Nika, thank you again. For the rest of you, we will see you in the next episode. Thanks.